Costume change. It's me and Ash. We're back. We look completely different to how we looked 3 minutes ago on the live stream. We're refreshed. I'm excited. We're doing a Q&A. Get your questions in the comments. What do you want to know from me? Or more importantly, I know you're more interested in what Ash thinks. What do you want to know from Ash? Ash, any questions you're scared of?
Oh, yeah. No, I'm scared of all questions. I was raised with a healthy fear of questioning. I'm an ethnic minority. You just have to say no comment to everything and hope that it ends.
Very good. My white privilege means that I love being asked questions. So fire away. If you want to know what I think, that just really makes me feel seen. This stream is partly because we want to sort of pour out what we believe to you. We want you to know what we think, but also we want you to subscribe to our organization. Novara Media is funded by our kind supporters. And quite frankly, we need more of you. It's a big organization. We're constantly trying to grow. We've got audio, we've got articles, big team here. And yeah, we want to kind of make this a bigger, more impressive organization. And the main thing I want to do is I want us to get a couple more cameras. So I no longer have to speak to Ash, my fabulous colleague, through the means of Zoom. I want her sitting right here next to me. I want a multi-camera setup so that, when we don't have that awkward thing where I'm like, Gary, I want to start the next segment. So can you take Ash's face off the side of the screen? I want us all to be in the same place. Beautiful. But to do that, we need a bit of money for an upgrade of our studio. So if you aren't already a supporter, please do go to novaramedia.com/support. Set up a monthly donation for whatever you can afford. Our traditional ask has been for the equivalent of 1 hour's wage a month, but whatever you can afford, we absolutely, really do appreciate it. Maybe actually also, in your questions to us, tell us, are you a subscriber? Are you considering becoming one? If you are a subscriber, how long have you been one? We want to know. Ash, you've been there for too long while I've been talking, so I feel like what do you want to add?
A very quick thing. Just something to add is that you were saying that, we want to grow as an organization. We also are. We have made a new hire recently who is going to be joining the team from March as part of the video team to help us make video content. We want to bring more people on board. And look, what I love about the organization is that there's so much of it. There's so many people that you don't see. There are people who, are responsible for editing, who are responsible for shooting. There are people who are responsible for making sure that we don't get sued for libel. There are people who just really, really beaver away on dotting every I and crossing every T for, our articles. And, articles are expensive to produce. Chatting shit on a live stream, easy, somewhat cheap. Articles, expensive. And the reason why we want to build up an organization which does lots of things, that makes podcasts, which does articles, which, has live streams, which does interviews, is because we want to create maximum informational value for our audience. And if you happen to be the kind of person who prefers listening to something than reading it, we want to have you covered. If you want to be someone who can spend time with a long read and not watching a video, we want you to feel like your needs are being met too. All I want is to make the audience happy. Is that so wrong?
Oh, and look, we've got this on the screen as well, which are sign up at novaramedia.com/support. I don't know how much that cost us, but it seems like we really are advancing as an organization because I don't think I've seen that there before. Send us in your questions. What we go? Let's go with it. Neil, question. Would Michael again advocate for voting for Starmer's Labour if there was a general election tomorrow? I mean, I think what I said at the last general election was I don't have very, very many strong feelings about it. It's up to you. And I still feel the same. My sort of views about Labour haven't changed much since the general election. If I lived in a Labour-Tory swing seat, I would vote Labour. If I voted, well, I do live in a Labour very much safe seat. And first time I've admitted this on air, I was walking my dog on election day and I wasn't allowed into the voting booth. So I didn't vote in the last general election, but I live in a safe enough seat that it doesn't matter. I'm very pragmatic about voting. I don't really do this whole expressive voting thing. It's not like I will vote for whoever it seems like I will have the most impact in voting for. And if I'll have no impact because I'm in an incredibly safe seat, I might not even vote at all. Ash, what's your take on this question?
I'm quite an emotive voter.
Are you?
I'd like answering the question not in terms of political analysis, but like, how do you feel about it? Because I think that's the important thing, is that you say, well, I'm quite pragmatic. I don't see this as an expression of my value system or beliefs. I think that there is something for me which feels quite emotive about it, even though I think of, the electoral system we have is like deeply flawed and constraining. I think there's something about, because I remember my mum taking me to the voting booth with her in 1997. And more than remembering that vote, I remember the massive watermelon that we got from the Turkish shop on the way home. And that was quite impactful, kind of like as a moment of political education.
I mean, if it came with watermelon, I would go. I would turn up. But
yeah,
no one was
called
offering.
bribery. You're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to do that. But, I think there's something about that, which is, I think she just taught me like it's a really important thing. So I don't vote unless I feel like I can morally stand by the decision that I've made. As stupid as that is, because I know how limited and limiting the first past the post system is, there is something emotive about it that I can't shake.
I think that's probably a healthier attitude than mine. I was planning to vote, but I think I was then a bit late for work. But I mean, everyone has work, right? That's not an excuse. Bronya Trishla, if money was no object, what would you wish for Novara Media to look, act, be like? Oof, if money was no object. I mean, if money was no object, we should probably save journalism. Because there is a big problem with the fact that it is very difficult to, like, what we do, I think at the moment, and I don't want to put ourselves down, but I don't think we will probably never be in a position to like save journalism, because what journalism needs is loads of money for loads of investigations, holding governments to account, explaining stuff. And there is a real crisis in that, because sort of the model of the newspaper collapsed. Comment is much cheaper than investigations. And that's why sort of, like clickbait is a big deal. So I suppose my ambitions were a bit more humble, which is sort of like to provide as much sort of like honest, curious journalism as I can in the position I'm in. But if I had loads of money, I would hire shed loads of reporters. There'd be a journalism school. It would all be, how can we make sure that there is a maximum amount of high quality, trusted information that people can, work with and, realistically understand the world. Ash, I want to know your answer to that question.
Okay, because I actually think that some of mine are not that crazy. Like, I think that it could be done like within our career lifetime if we grew big enough. One is, I think that we should have our own building, and in that building, I would want an event space which was big enough to hold, say, 150 to 200 people, so that we could have live podcast recordings like quite regularly, and it was a way for us to connect with our audience. Maybe we would have, a nice little cafe downstairs where you could get a nice espresso, but then in the evening, a nice little Negroni, some vermouth. Like, vermouth is very, very chic. So yeah, I would want all that going on, and like enough floors so that, like, other organizations could work in the same building, and there would be some kind of useful cross-pollination, right? That's what I would love. But there are other things which are like maybe more immediate that, like, if we grew big enough, or like, we got the right grant, we could do. One is, I would love for us to have a This American Lifestyle podcast with just like crazy high production values. You've got 17 people working on it, and the focus on it is storytelling and sort of experimentation with audio storytelling. Because I think that, as much as I find the politics of This American Life quite frustrating sometimes, no one better in audio storytelling. And there's no one in the UK doing it as well as they are. And that's because it's so expensive and so labor intensive. So I'd want that. I would want what I would call the climate lab. So one of the things that, because we can see a bit of the back end, and we can see what people engage with and what they don't, and we can see, what people tell us they want but then don't engage with. And the number one for that is climate stories. Everyone wants climate stories, right, when we ask them in our supporter survey, but it doesn't get the engagement. So I'm not sitting here saying, oh, well, that's you, the audience, who are wrong. We have to find out how to do that coverage, how to tell that story in a way which is engaging and keeps people with us. But that needs, like, experimentation requires room for failure. And so in our context, that means letting things fail and not work so you can learn and do it again. That needs money. So I'd have a climate lab for like climate reporting to work out how to get the engagement. So yeah, building This American Life and climate lab. And I don't think that all of those things are that far off.
This question is great, Ash. I love this. GHS with a super chat as well. Ash, are you still literally a communist? And would you go on Piers Uncensored?
I'd say I'm more communista than ever.
Interesting.
I really do. I really do. Like, I think that, I had my time flirting with social democracy, Michael. And I can see I can see that maybe social democracy was produced by a certain constellation of historical forces that don't exist, and that we couldn't just manifest it happening without those things. We got really close, but couldn't do it. I also think that my criticisms of identity politics, liberal identity politics, which isn't the same as saying like, oh, anti-racism's a load of nonsense. No, I still really believe in that. But my criticisms of liberal identity politics is, I think, coming from a more Marxist place. And would I go on Piers Uncensored? I might, if the story was right and the offer was right. But I know what I'm there for, which is I'm there because he wants to catalyze a conflict which will make me look crazy. So the opportunity and the upside has got to be big enough to justify embracing that amount of downside. That's how I make the judgment anyway. What about you, Michael? Would you do a tete-a-tete with Piers on Uncensored? Oh yeah,
but I've only been on once, and they haven't invited me back yet. So I want to. But yeah, I would go on in a flash. But my standards are a bit lower than yours, actually. I mean, there's plenty of people who can invite me on their show, and I'll say yes. So you're a bit more you're in higher demand than me. But if you're watching Piers Morgan's Bookers, please have me back. I've still got it as my pinned tweet because I thought that's the bit that I liked of it, but it's almost a year ago now. Sad. Right. Sorry. Now done. Asks, can we please talk about a new economic model? What points of contact can we establish with e.g. reform voters to find the common ground we all need to move forward? Now, I'm gonna answer this first, actually, because I think in terms of a long-term economic model, the real issue is going to be the kind of Varoufakis techno-feudalism answer or argument, which is sort of if AI makes sort of loads and loads of white-collar jobs sort of redundant, and then we have a few corporations sort of charging a rent on everything that happens in society, then there's going to be some big long-term questions. In the short term, what I've been thinking about a lot in terms of reform voters is, I think the story should be, we're going to tax some of the sort of international super rich in order to give hundreds of thousands of people apprenticeships to rebuild Britain, right? Apprenticeships to rebuild Britain. Because you often hear sort of like, oh, we can't build all these houses and all these roads at the same time because we don't have enough labor. There'll be a labor shortage, or we'll need loads more immigration to fill that labor shortage. If you just put loads and loads of people on apprenticeships that are sort of like high status, well valued, and then you get them to build stuff, and then you take a load of video cameras there, and I'm not talking about our video, I'm talking about you invite the news people there. That's going to be like catnip to reform voters, right? Because it's like manual work with your hands. We have an economy which has devalued the sort of skills of especially younger men who haven't gone to university. This would do all of that. You'd have exactly the sort of, the sort of two-sided story that you want, which would be taxing the rich to fund people to work. I think it would work electorally and economically, but it's not really that's obviously a short-term sort of marginal thing. Ash, what is your new economic model?
Well, I was thinking about your sort of common ground with an archetypical reform voter. There is a phrase that I love that Darkest Howe used once, which is the importance of listening with a discerning ear. And I love this thing about the discerning ear, because I think when you listen to reform voters with a discerning ear, what they're telling you is that society is deeply unfair, and the way in which they see it is that it's the people at the very top and at the very bottom who can get away with murder and who get something for nothing. So if you're at the very top, you can be corrupt, you can just insulate yourself with wealth, you don't give a damn about anything. But they also see, okay, well, if you're an asylum seeker, you just get put up in the hotel. Oh, well, if you don't work, you just get benefits. Rare, 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 rare. Oh, if you're a criminal, like they don't even investigate people for like burglary or shoplifting anymore. And so that's the thing which makes it not quite the same as the left's analysis, where they go, oh, but we all hate these guys at the top. Is that feeling that also the people at the bottom, the very bottom, are also getting stuff for free, even though if we get into it and we know how difficult it is to have a life on benefits, and we know how difficult it is to be a disabled person in this country. That's the story. So I don't know how you kind of engage with that, but I think like a big part of it is that like people need someone to be angry with them, and like you can't just come in and say like, oh, but I've really got the solution to you. Like you've got no credibility unless you seem like you also have skin in the game and that you also have a reason to be angry. In terms of the new economic model, I think you put it best, Michael, which is the threat of artificial intelligence, of creating a rentier economy on steroids, like that is the big threat. That is absolutely the big threat. And the problem is that like if you've got a bunch of white collar workers defending their job, no one likes white collar workers very much. They're not a sympathetic group of people. It's hard to build a politics around. So right wing populism, nationalism plus AI, that it's a dicey time.
Eek. I suppose also, I think this is where, just to sort of go off piste a little bit, there is a big recognition, even from sort of like the Financial Times and the time. I'm seeing this in all the centrist press now, where they're saying Starmer needs to pick fights. He needs to pick fights because otherwise he's just absent. He needs to get on the playing field. And I think the most obvious people to pick fights with would be sort of like the international welfare, but because Labour have made their whole economic policy sort of based on or dependent on the goodwill of the international welfare, they can't do that. So the only people who you can, we need the international investors for the growth, but we also need to pick a fight with someone. Well, that kind of only leaves the migrants and the disabled, which is sort of, I think, the sad situation we're in now. So you need an economic model, which means that you can make an enemy of the sort of economic international elite. If you sort of have as central to your political project that you need their goodwill, then you're either going to lose or end up going after sort of weaker, sort of marginalized people.
Can I add one thing? One really, really small thing? It's not a small thing, it's a big thing, which is the climate. It's a big thing, which is the climate and the necessity or the pressures of living within ecological limits where your headroom is shrinking. Now, I know that there are all these discussions about geoengineering. We've had some of them. I don't yet see the big mirror in space. I've not seen a viable geoengineering option at scale. Like, it doesn't seem to be on the table. It doesn't seem to be immediate. And so in that context, if you're having an economic model, and this is, the Biden proposition, and this is Starmer's proposition, which is, okay, well, we'll have growth. We'll have quite a lot of growth, and that's going to be the thing which, boosts conditions for the lower and the middle classes. It's like, well, can you keep having, more and more growth every year? Like, can we find, more things to consume, more exchanges on the market to be made when we're thinking about living within ecological limits? The big fuck up of Starmer is that he bet the house on growth. The central question is not growth. The central question is distribution, particularly when we're looking at highly restricted carbon budgets.
Sorry, I was thinking, I'm agnostic about growth in the West, very keen on growth everywhere else. Which is, to be honest, the principal reason why I'm so interested in sort of like tech solutions to climate, because we need China to keep going. They're still only on, what is it? I think there's about kind of a third of our average incomes. And lots more people in China need to become middle class. India needs to become middle class. We need so much growth, which is why I think worldwide on a global level, which is why I'm into the tech stuff. You're right, though. No one has done the geoengineering at scale, which is why I think they need to do some more experimentation on it. But we do also, I mean, that would only ever be a stopgap. So we do have to work out how to live a zero carbon life ultimately. And we should be doing that at pace. Lewis, since Jeremy Corbyn won't start a new party, what do you think of left entrying the Greens? So I don't know, just call it joining the Greens instead of sort of like entryism. I'm sure they'll welcome you with open arms. Can we make them less NIMBY, Lisa Simpson-y, and middle class from within? I don't know. The thing is, I mean, I think it only makes sense to join the Greens if your number one priority is to get PR. Because the Greens are not going to be able to replace Labour. Because I think that the politics that one needs to win a majority in this country can't be as liberal as the Greens are. But if you join the Greens to try and get some kind of hung parliament at the next general election, which means that you can have the Greens appealing to sort of urban liberal people, and then Labour being the more sort of small C conservative social democratic party, that would be great. But I think the idea of sort of like joining the Greens so that then they can be the new the new sort of exclusive left party, I don't see it as viable. Ash, what's your opinion?
Well, I think it depends on what your theory of change is. And I know that that's a really boring answer, but it's the real answer.
Yes.
Like, if what you want is, a threat to Labour, which, is competing for seats, particularly, in urban constituencies with a high proportion of graduates, then you go, yeah, join the Greens. Join the Greens, vote for the Greens, campaign for the Greens, because then Labour's finally got a competitor to their left. It maybe makes Labour do something different. If what you want is for the Greens to be a vehicle in itself for a big political transformation, I just don't see that yet. I think they can be very competitive in many, many more seats. I think that's true, but I don't see them, I guess, competing with Labour at that level. Really, then what you're saying is, let's do Corbynism, which we couldn't quite get over the line, but do it smaller. And so I don't think that it can be the vehicle in itself. I also think that, I don't know who you are, commenter. I don't know what you're like, but I know that if I were to join the Greens, I wouldn't be making it less graduate, less middle class, less Lisa Simpson. All right. Like, I am brown Hermione Granger. Like, I'm not changing the vibe. And so I sort of think that the important thing to remember, at least in my case, is that when you point a finger, there's three pointing back at you. I'm not from a small town. I do not have a regional accent. London, of course, is not a region. It is the alpha and omega of existence. But don't have regional accent. Like, went to university. I come from a particular background, and I can speak to that background very well. Maybe the thing. I also am a little bit skeptical sometimes of occupy some of the identity characteristics of the kind of people we've struggled winning over. Kind of be able to take on some progressive policy positions, but also sort of put the progressive graduates in their place a little, like saying, we can't win with just you. Maybe that's the way forward. I don't know, but I'm open to being convinced. I'm open to being convinced about everything.
Yeah, I think if you're trying to pull Labour in a direction, I'd just say go into the Greens and try and make it the tax the rich to fund apprentices and do a green industrial revolution party. Because I think, there's ways of, if you're trying to obviously Labour has a divided electorate, and if you're just going to try and sharpen those, it's a bit like the people who sort of wanted a second referendum, and so they sort of spend all their time trying to drag Labour to their favour position, even though that position is going to make them lose in the rest of the country. So it's sort of like, what's the point in that? What's the strategy? I suppose it comes down to theories of change again. Ishtak, we all obviously love you, but how do you react when other left platforms aren't such fans for whatever reason? I'm chill. I think everyone's entitled to their own opinions. Ash knows this, that if people are critiquing me, I kind of leave them to it. I think that the only time I get in trouble is when I respond, because I think I've been misrepresented. So that's why I'm always just like, let's just be zen and ignore it. But no, I think it's fine. I mean, we've also criticized a lot of people. You know, it's people. It's people. It's people holding us to account or whatever. I might disagree with them, but it's perfectly fine for them to say, Novara Media don't disagree with my position on this. It's like, cool, that's fine. What do you think, Ash?
You have a very secure sense of self, and I've always admired this about you. And it's a way in which I really wish I could be more like you. I wish I could hold my seat with the confidence that you do. I really, really envy this about you. I just don't think you're that neurotic a person, whereas I'm deeply neurotic.
I think I do have low neuroticism, but I have deleted Twitter from my phone, which I do really recommend. Right, next question. Grants, and tell me who the hell is bad mouthing us in the comments so we can go after them. Right, Grants. We'll send our cease and desist letters as soon as this stream is over. Right, Grants Plants. Do you see a future for Scottish independence? I mean, in a way, I'm not the best placed person to answer the question. It seems as if like the movement has lost its momentum for at least a decade, I would imagine. Could be proved wrong. Ash?
I see a future for it, but the problem is that the SNP is very, very weak at the moment. So the political vehicle for that, I mean, I think it had these it had two once in a generation leaders come along back to back, right? You had Alex Salmond and you had Nicola Sturgeon, and there was also a huge amount of Westminster instability and a Tory government for 14 years. These are all things which strengthen the case for independence, not just on its own grounds, but as a sense of, get me away from Tory Britain. So that becomes a harder circumstance for the SNP to operate in. Labour government, it's more difficult. But I don't know. Never say never. Scottish politics is something I'd like to learn more about, actually. I don't feel particularly confident in my analysis.
Oh, KH, this is an easy one. Can you get a message to Aaron, please? Ask him to try and get another long-form interview with John Gray. One of the best things I've ever seen on this channel. I will pass that on to Aaron. Hopefully he's watching. He should be. And if you haven't already watched his fantastic interview with John Gray, it's an episode of Downstream. I suppose you just type in Novara Media John Gray and it will presumably be the first hit. This is a good question for you, Ash. Richard D. was for both of us, but you'll have a very easy answer. Have either of you thought about writing a book? Someone hasn't seen your pinned tweet.
Someone hasn't seen my pinned tweet. My book is coming out in 2 weeks. It's coming out in 2 weeks. It's called Minority Rule. It is about how identity has become the dominant obsession for both the left and the right. There's a lot of self-criticism in it. I'm not just pointing the finger. I'm looking at the three pointing back at me. And it's about how class consciousness has been systematically weakened in order to kind of pave the way for a historic wealth grab by the ruling class. So pre-orders apparently really help. That's what my agent told me today on the phone. Pre-orders really help. So if you're interested, please pre-order it. And also, I am going on tour. So there are dates in Bath, Birmingham, Norwich, Manchester, London, Glasgow, Brighton. So if you're in any of those cities, come along. It would be really nice to see you. Nice to see a friendly face. And I don't know, man, like, if you're that strapped for cash, shoplift the book. I'm not going to tell anyone.
I don't know how friendly his face is because his icon's too small, but Benedict on Games says, just wanted to say I'm seeing Ash in Bath with my parents later this month and I'm really looking forward to it.
Oh, nice.
You know what, because that was a super chat, you've reminded me again. If you aren't already, please go to novaramedia.com/support. We appreciate every single donor. A one-off donation also fine. Obviously, a monthly donation is helpful for forward planning. But please do go there and donate whatever you can afford. Really, very much appreciated. Tim Bunt said their plans to diversify NM outside of the London bubble. Yeah, we've always got these on the back foot, but we need to keep expanding the organisation. Although I have to say, Aaron lives in Bournemouth. mean, it would be good to have a co-host in the north.
Portsmouth.
Portsmouth is same thing, no? No, that's a bad look. We're discussing getting things outside of that. Well, the reason I say that is because he's from Bournemouth and he lives in Portsmouth. So this is I made the mistake. I went on holiday with my parents a couple of years ago. So where was it? Maybe it was Swanage? I'm not sure. Anyway, and I messaged Aaron sort of saying like, we're just a few miles down from your house in Bournemouth. He was like, Michael, I live in Portsmouth. But there we go. Someone says, please not the south. Yeah, they don't want someone further south than London. Alistair McNaught says, Ash's book is brilliant. I have read a proof copy given to me by a bookseller friend. Highly recommend it. My partner's just read it and loves it. I'm next in line. I've got it in my bag. I'm going to start it this evening. Very excited for it. Right. Ernest from Canada. No, he's called Ernest. He's from Canada, or she. He, I presume. Loves the channel. Why do you guys think that left-wing parties are unable to connect to young men, particularly young white men, across the West? Ash.
You're a young white man.
You know more about young white men than I do. It's difficult to know oneself. You know, I feel like I'm too deluded by my own insecurities and privilege to know what I really think.
I think that one of the problem is that we've just demonized like majority groups a lot. So white man becomes, and I know that I've done it too, right? White man becomes like a derogatory construction. And I understand that what people are really talking about that aren't white men as individuals. They're talking about white supremacy, racism, patriarchy, and misogyny. But then when you say that those ideas, those ways of thinking, those social structures are inseparable from these people, I mean, what do you want them to do? Stop being white? Stop being men? Like, you can't, shame drives people away. And like, it's something which I've been thinking about a lot, which is these things that we know to be true in our personal lives, we don't seem to apply those rules to politics. And it was something that you said, Michael, which really like kicked this off for me, which is when you were talking about the Jonathan Haidt theory about the sort of, CBT teaches you the value of like resilience and not treating your feelings as though they're real. And then we've come up with a system of identity politics where we tell people the opposite, like your feelings are always right. They're always telling you the truth. And similarly, what we know from our personal lives is that shame drives people away. We also know that people can weaponize victimhood in order to get some kind of social power or social status or to try and make themselves less vulnerable. We all recognize that from our personal lives. And then in the realm of politics, we go, no. So I think that's part of it. I think that like we did too much tolerating of cry bullying. I think we did too much demonizing of people just on the basis of their identity. And I think we played a game of intersection Olympics where we decided that people who should be most prominent shouldn't be the people who have, I guess, like the mean, like not mean as in unkind, but mean as in like the average experience. You have to choose the most marginalized person on the planet. So you got to go for, someone who's got all of the intersections of, race and ethnicity and class and disability and sexuality and gender identity at the same time. And that's not to say that that person's experience isn't shaped by all those things in a very powerful way. Of course it is, but it just means that numerically, they're not going to be that representative of that many people. They're not going to be that representative of that many people.
I'm going to make an admission and sort of push it into a question. Because when I say, obviously I do know a bit about white men, right? But all of the things you just said there, I prefer you saying it as a non-white woman than me saying it as a white man. Because I think if I said that, it would be received worse. I suppose, how do you feel about that? Do you sort of feel like you are taking on the responsibility of a woman of color to sort of criticize identity politics in a way where you might have more freedom than a white person or a guy?
I was going to say a word which is a very cancelable word, but I can't help it. It's a very London word as well. I was going to call you a pussy, Michael.
This will win back the men.
That's all in back for men. I mean, no, but the thing is that I also understand that. Like, you know, fear of social ostracism is a real fear. Also, you don't want to get yelled at. That's not a nice experience. And I also think, I get why white guys on the left don't want to say it. And I also get that they'll be received very differently. That doesn't mean I'm always received well. I mean, I've had my own fair share of people, I think, representing my point of view and my politics, and which I think is deeply unfair. That doesn't mean they don't have the right to say it. They've got the right to say whatever they like. But, it's not nice when it happens. And maybe part of the thing that I can do is that I also really understand why when because like when I was growing up, it was the fucking wasteland for representation. Like I just never saw anyone who looked like me in positions of like status or prominence, or who were seen as like cool or desirable or anything. And so I just like had this like baggage of self-loathing that I took everywhere. And then I went to a university where like first week, freshers week, someone came up to me and was like, Enoch Powell was right. And I was like, oh, fuck this, man. This sucks. Like it was not a woke campus. Like people said fucked up shit all the time. And then like around, a couple of years later, it's like this identity politics thing starts to come along. And I go, oh, people are going to listen to me now. And this thing, which has felt so like, unseen and unrecognized by people. Like I finally have a way to like, get a grip on the social world around me. So maybe that's something which I can speak to as a person of color. It's not just, well, people aren't going to call me racist because I'm brown. The other thing that I can do is say, I really understand why that was so appealing. But, there's sometimes nothing more dangerous in this life than getting what you want, or getting the wrong amount of what you want.
Getting too much of what you want. Everything in moderation. My new political slogan. No, not really. That was very interesting, though. I'm glad I answered that question. I am kind of. There's a really interesting article in the New York Times a couple of weeks ago by Ross Dufat. He's kind of like the resident conservative commentator, and he was saying that cultural hegemony has to be light touch, and sort of like a big problem with sort of like cancel culture and DEI or whatever is that it wasn't light touch anymore. And that's why there was this huge backlash against it, which I thought was quite interesting. I mean, I'm sure there are many sort of ways one can disagree with that, but it was interesting to me. Almost 300 of you have replied to our poll telling us you're not signed up. I thought this was going to be a good news story. Why not? Tell us no, I don't want to seem like I'm mugging our YouTube viewers. So there are many reasons not to sign up. But we would love if you were to go to novaramedia.com/support and sign up for whatever you can afford. Omar Sokni, why hasn't Novara Media got an app? Don't really know the answer to that. I mean, I wouldn't know how to make one. Have you ever? Do you know the answer to that, Ash?
It has been discussed at length. So at the moment, we're in the middle of a website redesign, which is being handled by our very, very capable acting head of digital, Pietro, who is so great. He's got a team of 2. So that's the focus at the moment. We've been talking about an app for a while. It obviously takes time and it takes money. But it is a priority. We just got to get this website redesign, and also some like analytics tools that we really need more of. Like we've got to get that out the gate first.
Someone also has just said too expensive. Apparently. I mean, can't ChatGPT like make you an app now for like in 10 seconds? I don't know. This is probably very offensive to our tech team for me to suggest such a thing. So I retract that. Right. Mick Coffey says, advice for a young journalist now that most local news outlets and radio news have folded. Really difficult question. I mean, I think when I sort of said if we had unlimited money, I'd save journalism. I think this is a massive problem with journalism. Paul Mason actually had a really interesting article or podcast about this sort of like 10 years ago, where he was he started on, I think, like Computer Weekly or like PC Magazine, saying there used to just be so many different trade outlets, local outlets. So you could start as like a bottom rung reporter, learn sort of like the skills of reporting, and then rise up to be wherever he was, economics editor on Newsnight, or the BBC or Channel 4, I can't quite remember. And that ladder has completely gone. So I just don't really know what to advise people, because I mean I feel like the way I got into journalism, I don't know how replicable it is really, which is just sort of like I sort of pitched the show to Novara Media. I was like, we don't have a left-wing TV show. Can I make it? And they're like, yeah. But I don't know how. You can't really give that as advice. I don't know, Ash. Do you have a better answer than I do?
I really don't, because again, it's like I'm in the same position as you, which my way into journalism was through Novara, and so I don't know. I didn't set out to be a journalist. It's not like a vision or a plan that I had in my head. So I feel really bad for not being able to offer advice.
I mean, what's a shame is because the one thing you can, like, the thing that's really thriving is like analysis on Substack. So like if you like, I'm not a good writer. I really would love to be a good writer, but I'm not a good writer. But like it seems to be sort of flourishing people who are good writers and like can write analysis, and then you might sort of start sort of writing to 10 people on Substack, and then it gets more and more and more, which would be interesting if you like writing. But I would love to tell people how they can sort of like start reporting. And I just think that seems difficult at the moment. I wish I could give a better answer as well. And I suppose maybe sort of start podcasts or YouTube channels, and don't be too sort of disheartened if only 10 people are watching it at the beginning, and then, slowly build out from there, potentially. Maybe that's the best advice I can give. Andrew Wilton, Ash, do we need more political rap music in the UK? I have to say lots of political rap music from the UK was often a bit cringe, wasn't it?
I don't like political rap. I love rap and I love left-wing politics, but I want these things different. And I think that like one of the problems with political rap is that obviously you've got some incredible examples of like very explicitly political rap. And Public Enemy, they weren't just pioneers politically, they were pioneers in hip hop for a reason, right? Like in terms of like Chuck D's flow and his delivery, but also like the production on it, the use of sampling. I mean, it pushed hip hop as an art form forward, just like inarguably. But I think a lot of the time with a lot of, I guess like quote unquote, like conscious rap, is that I often find that it's not as innovative when it comes to the music or the technical proficiency on the mic. I think that lots of rap, which doesn't get classed as conscious or whatever, has a social critique in it. I think Kendrick Lamar's an example. He's always someone who's saying like, don't look at me like an activist, but he's got something to say about the state of America. He's, you wouldn't call him like a socialist or left wing though. And I think that's valuable on its own. I'm also happy to be corrected if people have got phenomenal examples of conscious, like innovative, technically acrobatic rap. I'm up for hearing it, but it's not been my experience as a fan of the art form.
The Bitcher, who is a right bitcher, I have to say, says, February the 10th, 2025 will forever be known as #Ashgate or #HateGate. We the people would like to know why Michael hates Ash and what is really going on behind the scenes at Novara Media. Ash, I've never in my life said a bad word or had a bad thought about you. You're of all the people in this bloody organisation, I really like you. Presumably this is a reference to me trying to push your face off screen so I could start a segment. But I know you didn't take that in a bad way.
No, I took it very personally. And I know that if I was in the studio with you, when we get our multicam set up, you're going to put me in a wheelie chair. So when you don't want me in the shot anymore, you can just boot me out.
Can't wait for that. What's the closest you've ever got to walking off a set or showing your backhand on a panel? I imagine you're going to have a good answer for this.
I think it was... this would have been 2016, 2017, around that time. And I was doing a Sky News like segment, and there was a guy from UKIP who was really, really tall, like really, really tall. So they had to put me on this like box of kit so that we didn't look, like Gandalf and Frodo when we were in the same shot. And he kept talking about, the working class this, the working class that, and putting all these like really like kind of racist opinions in their mouth. And I was like, well, that working class people of color exist. And then he accused me of playing the race card. And I remember feeling so angry. And I remember feeling so kind of powerless because I was like, oh, he's just accused me of playing the race card. Like, that's literally not what I'm doing. Like, I'm not playing the race card about me. I'm just saying people exist. But I'm a brown person and I'm on TV with him, and I could just it felt like a cage just got like dropped on me, and it wasn't of my own choosing. And I was just like, I should just get off these stupid fucking boxes. Like, why am I standing on these stupid fucking boxes? But I didn't walk off. I've never walked off. What about you? Have you had a moment where like, I guess like in your journalism career where you felt incredibly frustrated in the conversation with somebody?
Yeah, well, once with Jacob Rees-Mogg, where it was after sort of one of the Palestine demos, and he was sort of, calling everyone terrorist sympathizers, and that's why. Because the main thing you have to, like, I think I can, as you said earlier, I think one of the main things I can do is kind of keep calm. And the moment I've lost that, I've got nothing else. Right. So the moment I get stressed, I'm like, I've really fucked this. So with Jacob Rees-Mogg, he was sort of saying that, and I was sort of like saying, that's outrageous. And I was like, oh my God, this is a fucking nightmare. I looked back at it afterwards. With Piers Morgan as well, I mean, he does this thing where he just interjects sort of before you can finish your sentence, and over and over and over and over again. And you're like, but so they're the two ones where I was like that. But no, I'd never considered sort of walking off. Oh, actually, the one time I did nearly walk off, and I should have walked off, was when I went to that show, that GB News show, where they put me on the different table. So I really wish I had walked off. I was like, I don't. But anyway, I'd gone all the way to, where was it? Somewhere on the other end of the central, on the east end of the central line. Dominic Cummings has asked, with a £5, you got more than that, Dom. Have either of you been invited, and would you go on the Trigonometry podcast as Aaron has before? I haven't been asked. As I've already made clear on this, I've got really low standards when it comes to what I'm asked on. So I would, as long as they let me sit at the same table as them. Ash, what's your answer to that?
Yeah, don't put me on the cuck table anymore. So I've been asked. I've been asked quite a few times. I said no before the book was finished because I wanted to have something, I don't know, like a solid foundation for me to be on there and to talk about, and something that felt like it could anchor me a bit, and I wouldn't just be like spiraling off and like getting pulled down all these different rabbit holes. They've asked me on, like, within the context of doing media for the book. I think I might be. I'm not sure. Can't remember. But I think I might be. It's obviously like you feel nervous about it because it's very ideologically opposed, and you're worried about will that hostility manifest in like trying to do me over. And obviously, I'm going to go prepared for someone to do me over. I'm not going to go in naive and be like, but what about the free market of ideas? Like, I'm not an idiot. But I think that you also have to, have confidence in your ideas, and, what is faith, love, and virtue unassailed, as Milton said. Like, you've got to assail yourself a bit and put yourself in the crucible. So,
wow. I think that would be a great interview. I'd really look forward to watching that. Okay, last two questions. Giblets for the cats, lucky cats. Has Ash got any green room stories from the media rounds?
Yes, I do. Okay, so there was a Labour MP who shall remain nameless, who was a little bit handsy.
Wow.
They're no longer an MP. They
That's
did
for the
that
best.
thing which is so annoying, and men always do it, where they put their hand on the small of your back, and already you're a bit like, why is your hand on the small of my back? And then he just sort of like did this like little hand dip just slightly below the waist of my trousers, like onto the skin, and I was just like, ugh. So there's that. There's somebody at one of the big media organizations who just, if I ever wear anything like knee length or above, gets very excited about it, always makes comments about it. That's gross. George Osborne, met him. He is a weird fucking dude. He's like, he comes across like, you know, those fish that never see daylight because they're so deep under the water. That's what he's like in real life. He's like a deep sea fish that never sees daylight. And what else? Oh, I mean, there's so many stories of like people like losing their minds. Like, I think I've told this story before, but my favorite time of someone losing their mind was I was on Politics Live, and one of the discussion points on Politics Live was like, are the hard left nasty? And so I was there as the representative of the hard left. And the reason why they were doing this story was because a woman at a protest, like a random woman, had been filmed shouting at like a right-wing counter-protester. And I tried to make my point, and I was trying to be like, well, look, politics is about conflict, and that's not unique to any one group. But like everyone who was there, and it was Kwasi Kwarteng, the speechwriter Philip Collins, not Genesis drummer Philip Collins, I think someone from the Telegraph, and they were all just like getting the boot in. They were just like, no, the hard left are uniquely nasty. And then after the camera stopped rolling, Philip Collins loses it. He's screaming. He's like slamming his hand down on the table. He's like yelling his head off at Kwasi Kwarteng, who's been like winding him up. And the host was like, oh, poor Philip. I think Kwasi rather riled him up there. And I was like, you crazy motherfuckers. Like, you've just been going on about how like the hard left are like uniquely nasty and making me feel like I am a sort of like tribune from the barbarian horde at the gate. And this is how you all behave. And then the thing that like, it only occurred to me a while later, I was like, a member of the public who was filmed shouting at somebody was held to a higher standard than this guy who works in politics, who absolutely lost his head. So yeah, got loads of green room stories. I love green room stories.
Oh, Aaron says, John Gray back in autumn. So you've got your wishes already. Ooh. And this is not a question, but it's the final thing I'm going to read out. HF with a super chat. Thank you very much. I don't have a lot of money, but I will donate a cool £50 if you get Nadine Dorris on Novara. Now, I think she'd be much more likely to say yes to you than me, Ash. Would you consider it? I would love that.
I find I think that there is a certain genre of person who are agents of evil and camp icons at the same time, yes. And she's number one. Yeah,
her then Priti Patel, I think.
Also, like, who was the American politician who I think was getting her boobies felt up at like a Beetlejuice showing? Like, agent of evil, camp icon. Lauren Boebert.
Wow, interesting. All right, let's wrap up there. Ash, it's been a delight being joined by you for this question and answer session.
So much fun. Also, I want people to know that Michael really is very well adjusted and an absolute joy to work with. And like, whenever I get to hang out with you, I always come back home and I'm like, Michael was really funny.
Well, that's why we're going to get each other back in the same goddamn room so we can finally do some more bonding to help us make that happen. Can you reunite me and Ash for the small sum of however much you can afford a month at novaramedia.com/support? We really do appreciate your support. If you're already a supporter, thank you so much. You make all of this possible. If you aren't already, please do go to novaramedia.com/support to know whatever you can afford. Let's wrap up there. Ash, it's been a pleasure and a privilege being joined by you this evening. It's been a pleasure and a privilege
I'm going to go eat my dinner.
All of your questions. So we'll see you there. Enjoy your dinner, Ash.